They took my wife. That I could live with. But when they destroyed the garden I spent 3 years building, I knew they wouldn't let me live in peace. Not anymore. That morning, I opened the back door like I always did. The sun was just rising. Cold air. Dew still clinging to the grass. But instead of green, I saw nothing. Just bare dirt. The lettuce. The tomatoes. The cucumbers. Everything I watered. Everything I cared for. Like a man clinging to memory. Gone. I stepped forward. My feet pressed into the soil, ripped apart overnight. No roots. No stems. No trace. As if the garden had never existed. I bent down. Took a handful of dirt. The smell of compost from last night still on my hands. This wasn't an accident. Not some wild animal. This was human. A hand that wanted to erase a part of my life. Max, my dog, barked like mad. He ran along the fence, growling toward the house next door. I looked up. The lights came on. A door opened. Laughter spilled out. Daniel, the man who used to be my closest friend, who once sat right here, drinking beer with me, who planted the first tomatoes by my side. Now, the husband of my ex-wife. My throat tightened. I wasn't surprised they took her. But the garden? Why the garden? Were they trying to erase me completely? Last night, I thought I heard the sound of shovels cutting into the ground. I told myself it was just a dream. But now, seeing this empty dirt, I knew I was right. They crossed my fence, in the dark, and crushed the only place I had left for peace. I clenched my fist. Soil crumbled between my fingers. My hand trembled, and one thought echoed in my head. They think pulling out a few plants will break me, but they forgot. I've lost far worse, and this time, they picked the wrong man to fight. I still remember that last night. The three of us sitting at the dinner table. Ethan tapped his spoon against the bowl and whispered, "Mom, Dad, are we going fishing this weekend?" I hadn't even answered yet. Allison put her phone down, her eyes somewhere far away. "Maybe not. I think I'll be busy." Ethan lowered his head and kept eating in silence. I didn't know. That was our last family dinner. In that house. My name is Thomas, 41 years old, a history teacher. My life was never dramatic. I loved books. I loved teaching. And most of all, I loved quiet mornings in the garden. I thought peace like that could hold a family together. But life doesn't always follow the rules. Even when you're the one teaching history. I met Allison in college. She was bright, ambitious, always speaking like a spotlight was on her. I was the opposite. Quiet. Content with an old book over a crowded party. When we got married, friends said, "Opposites attract." I believed them. And for years, I lived by that belief. Then Ethan was born. Small, dark eyes, always clinging to his mother, but reaching for my hand when he fell asleep. Every night, I stayed up rocking him, and I made a promise. You'll never grow up in a broken home. I kept that promise. For 13 years. Until I couldn't anymore. The man who came between us was Daniel, my best friend since we were kids. We played on the same team, laughed through campfires, swore we'd share everything in life. I trusted him like I trusted myself. The day I introduced him to Allison, I even joked, "If you ever get tired of me, you can go with Daniel. He's funnier than I am." I never thought that joke would turn real. At first, I just thought they clicked. They talked for hours about things I didn't care about. Then I started noticing the looks. The kind of looks that shouldn't exist. Between your wife and your best friend. One night, I came home early. The garage door was half open. Inside, Daniel and Allison standing too close. I heard their whispered laughter. When they saw me, they jumped. Pretended to be talking about football. That image still feels like a thorn stuck in my skull. The night Allison confessed, she didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She sat straight, looked me in the eye, and said, "I don't want this anymore. The one I choose is Daniel." The air went heavy. I could hear the clock ticking, the wind slipping through the cracks, but I couldn't hear my own heartbeat. Ethan was in the next room, the sound of his video game spilling out. I looked at Allison, then at the family photo on the wall, the three of us smiling at the beach years ago. And I knew. It was over. After the divorce, Ethan stayed with her. I didn't blame him. He needed a whole home. And somehow, Daniel gave him that. But between me and my son, a distance grew. Once while talking, he slipped and called Daniel Dad. I forced a smile, nodded. But when he turned away, I realized my fist was clenched so hard it bled. I didn't leave town, partly because the school still needed me, partly because I didn't want Ethan to think I had abandoned him. I bought a small house on the edge of town. Not much space, but a patch of land in the back. That's where I began again. At first, just a few rows of lettuce. But every time I dug into the soil, I felt lighter. Every drop of sweat soaking into the ground, like pain leaving my body. When I missed Ethan, I planted cucumbers. When I felt anger at Daniel, I planted tomatoes. The garden grew, green, alive, a place where I buried sorrow and picked up hope. Max, my dog, since Ethan was little, became my shadow. He'd run around while I watered, stretch out in the sun while I pulled weeds. Some nights, I sat on the porch, Max resting his head on my leg, and I whispered to myself, maybe this is enough. Neighbors started to notice. They asked for vegetables, for seeds. I gave them away, and in return, I got smiles. But sometimes, I'd see Daniel driving by, his eyes lingering on my fence. Allison sitting next to him, glancing my way. Once our eyes met. She turned away, but not before I caught a smirk. They thought this garden was just food. They never understood. It was proof that even after betrayal, I could rebuild a world. Ethan stopped by sometimes. I'd take him into the garden, show him how to plant seedlings. He seemed distant, but I stayed patient. I believed. One day, when his hands touched the soil, he'd feel closer to me. My life circled around three things: the school, the garden, and Max. Quiet, steady, no family laughter, no long trips. But at least, I had a place to breathe. I thought the garden was untouchable, mine alone, a place to start over. But I was wrong. That morning, I stepped onto the porch, like every other day. But instead of green rows of vegetables, my eyes met a wasteland, torn up, scarred like a battlefield. I froze. Then I ran, dropped to my knees. My hand lifted a tomato plant, ripped out by the roots, still wet, still dripping from the water I gave it last night. 3 months of care. Now, just a dead root in my hand. I looked around. The soil churned, heavy footprints pressed deep into the ground. Too large for an animal. A man's steps. The gate wasn't broken, which meant someone climbed the fence and walked in here, like it was his land. Max growled. His fur standing, running circles around the fence, barking like mad. I rested my hand on his head, whispered, "You're right, Max. Someone was here last night." My chest felt crushed, not just because of the vegetables. They had wiped away the only place I still found peace. I looked up, toward the house next door. Lights on, laughter spilling out. Daniel. That afternoon, I went to school like a ghost. On the board, I wrote 1776. The year of the Declaration of Independence. But I stopped. One thought circled in my head. Men once fought for the right to live free. And me? I couldn't even protect a garden. After class, I drove to the farmer's market. I needed something for dinner. But at the end of the aisle, my chest tightened. A new stand. Rows of lettuce. Bright red tomatoes. Curved cucumbers. Exactly like mine. Down to the scars on the skin. The man behind the stall looked up. Daniel. He smirked. The same smirk that once made a classroom laugh. Now it made my skin crawl. "Well, Thomas, here for some vegetables? Look familiar?" My fists clenched. My voice cracked. "Where did you get these?" Daniel leaned in, his voice low, but loud enough for others to hear. "From land that was never yours." I stared into his eyes, my throat burning. "You took my wife. Now my garden too?" Daniel laughed, sharp, like a blade cutting air. "So what? If I want it, I take it. Even your little slice of peace." I wanted to hit him, but I stood still, nails digging into my palm. Finally, I turned away. Behind me, his laughter echoed, hammering in my head. That night, when I came home, the fence was sprayed red. One word: loser. Sloppy letters. Glowing under the streetlight. I stood there, Max barking like crazy. I grabbed a brush, tried to clean it. The paint spread, staining worse. I bit down hard, swore to myself he would not see me break. At 2 a.m., Max barked again. I jumped out of bed, ran into the yard. Under the moonlight, I caught a shadow, leaping over the fence. On the ground, a torn garbage bag, rotten, crawling with flies. I gagged, my throat on fire. Inside the bag, a dead rat, a message, vile, personal. The next day, I knocked on Joe's door. My neighbor on the other side. He'd always complained about Max barking. I thought maybe he was part of it. But when I confronted him, his eyes went wide. He pulled me into his kitchen. On the table, a letter. "Look at this, Thomas. Your signature's on it." I froze. It was a complaint, filed to the neighborhood council, claiming Joe's chickens and ducks smelled, demanding he be kicked out. Signed, Thomas Miller. I shook my head. "I never wrote this." Joe's eyes narrowed. "Don't play games with me. I thought you were better than this." I tried again. "It wasn't me. Someone forged it." But I could see it. The doubt in his eyes. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't just about destroying a garden. Daniel was spreading lies, forging my name, turning the whole neighborhood against me. A dirty war. That evening, I drove to see Ethan. I didn't tell him about the garden. I just wanted to see him. To remember, I still had a reason to stand. Allison opened the door. Cold eyes. Inside, Daniel sat with a beer, legs crossed, smirking like a king in his chair. Ethan ran out, hugged me tight. But when Daniel called, "Hey son, come here a sec," Ethan let go and ran to him. I felt my chest crack open. I stepped into their backyard, and I broke. Rows of vegetables. Green, perfect. Even a new white wooden fence. A mirror of what I once had. Daniel walked out, stood beside Allison, his smirk sharper than ever. "Better than your old garden, huh?" I couldn't speak. Ethan stood between us. His eyes dropped to the ground. That silence hurt more than any insult. I turned, walked away. On the road home, I pulled over, rested my head on the wheel, breath heavy, eyes burning. In the back seat, Max whimpered. I put my hand on his head and whispered, "We won't give up, Max. We can't." Then a spark lit inside me. They could take my wife. They could destroy my garden. They could smear my name, make me the joke of this town. But they would not erase me. Not from this ground. I started the engine, drove straight to the supply store. I bought seeds, fertilizer, and a security system. As I loaded the boxes into my car, I muttered, "Wait for me, Daniel. If you think I'll back down, you're about to relearn history. Because I've lost more than you can imagine. And I'm still standing." I started over. From nothing. Every night, planting new seedlings. Every morning, watering them. Rain or shine. I set up cameras, floodlights. One thought in my head. I can't let them win. But within days, I knew Daniel wouldn't stop. One afternoon, in the middle of class, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Leave, before your garden turns to ash." The blood drained from my face. I shoved the phone back into my pocket, tried to finish the lesson, but my throat was dry. When I got home, a sack sat by the door. I lifted it. It tore open, coarse salt spilling everywhere. I ran to the garden. White patches burned into the soil. My lettuce collapsed, leaves shriveled. I grabbed handfuls of salt, tried to scrape it away. Pointless. Max barked. Snapped at the fence. I looked up. On the sidewalk, Daniel. Hands in his pockets, a smirk on his face. He raised a hand in a mock wave, like it was all a joke. The next evening, I invited Ethan for dinner. I grilled his favorite, roast chicken. The kitchen felt warm again when he walked in. I served him a piece, smiled. "Remember? When you were little, you ate 3 pieces in a row. Your mom had to stop you." He smiled faintly. Then his eyes dropped. He poked at his food. "Daniel says, this garden won't last. He knows how to grow better than you." The chicken turned to ash in my mouth. I wanted to argue, but I stayed quiet. Just looked at him. He didn't look back. His fingers tapped his phone. After dinner, he slung on his backpack. "I should go. Mom's waiting." I walked him to the door. Under the porch light, he paused, looked at the garden. Something flickered in his eyes. Hesitation, like he wanted to say something. Then Daniel's voice cut through the night. "Ethan, let's go." My son lowered his head and walked away. I stood there, hands trembling, empty inside. The next morning, flyers were plastered to my door. "Thomas, the neighborhood troublemaker, stay away from him." I ripped them down. Old Joe, my neighbor, passed by, shook his head. "Thomas, why are you threatening women? News is everywhere." I froze. "What?" He glared. "They say you've been lurking at doors, sending letters. Don't make me call the cops." I staggered back. Daniel wasn't just forging my name. He was painting me as a predator. Neighbors watched me with wary eyes. The chill of isolation gripped me, colder than winter. That night, around 3 a.m., Max barked like mad. I checked the cameras. A shadow slipped in, holding a can. I ran outside. Gasoline. The smell burned my nose. "Hey!" I shouted. He spun. Daniel. He dropped the can, leapt over the fence. I chased. Caught his sleeve in the street. I roared. "Why? What else do you want, Daniel? You took my wife. Now you want to burn down what's left of me?" He leaned close. Hissed in my ear. "I want you gone." Heat surged through me. My fist clenched. 1 inch from his face. Then I saw Max behind me, barking himself hoarse. Neighbors' lights flicking on. I let go. Daniel smirked, stepped back, and disappeared into the dark. I collapsed on the curb. Rain mixed with sweat. Chest heaving, I whispered. "I won't become you, Daniel. I won't." The next morning, a note lay at my door. I saw everything. I have proof. No name. I checked the cameras that night. A small figure appeared. The girl from across the street. She had left it. For the first time in weeks, I realized not everyone had turned away. But the war wasn't over. One stormy night, rain hammering the roof, glass shattered. A rock crashed into the kitchen, wrapped in plastic. "Leave. Next time it won't be just glass." Water poured in. Max howled. The light flickered. I picked up the rock, my hand shaking, but my eyes cold. The next morning, I planted more seedlings, installed more lights, linked alarms to my phone. Each strike of the shovel, like a hammer against my chest. I stood in the rain-soaked garden, wind in my face. Across the fence, Daniel's lights blazed. I knew he was watching. I whispered, voice raw. "Keep watching. Next time, I'll be ready. This war, I'm done defending." I knew Daniel would come back. The cheap tricks were just warm-ups. So I set traps. I pulled the floodlight from the corner, made one camera look broken, but hid 2 more inside the rows. Linked straight to my phone. And I waited. Night 5. 2 a.m. The alarm screamed. On the screen, a shadow climbing the fence. Then another. The light hit his face. Daniel. I bolted outside. Max barking like fury. The sensors lit the yard. Daniel and his buddy dragging a sack. The stench of gasoline heavy in the air. "Enough, Daniel!" I shouted. He turned, eyes wide, voice low and snarling. "You should have left. This isn't your place anymore." He flicked a lighter. Flames sparked, twisting his face into something monstrous. I lunged, grabbed his arm. We wrestled in the mud. Max tore into his friend's leg. The man screamed and ran. Daniel fought to spark the fire. I crushed his wrist, growled through my teeth. "You took my wife. You took my son. But you will not take my soul." "Dad!" The shout cut through the night. I froze. At the fence, Ethan, pale, shaking, a phone in his hand, recording. Daniel's voice broke, desperate. "Ethan, listen, your father's the destroyer. He set me up. He wants to blame me. You can't trust him. Trust me." Ethan's eyes trembled. His lips parted. My heart clenched. If he believed Daniel again, I'd lose him forever. I roared, throat raw. "Ethan, look! Who's holding the lighter? Who's trying to burn this garden?" Silence. Then Ethan screamed. "Enough! I saw it. You wanted to burn Dad's garden. You lied to all of us!" Daniel snarled, charged at him, reaching for the phone. I slammed into him. We crashed into the dirt. I pinned him down, fist raised, shaking with rage. Voices in my head screamed, "End it. Here, now." His eyes flickered. Fear. No longer a loudmouth. Just a pathetic man. "Dad, don't." Ethan grabbed my arm, tears in his eyes. His voice trembling, but firm. "If you hit him, you'll be just like him." My breath tore out of me. My fist loosened. I collapsed. Gasping, Daniel staggered back, face pale, mouth fumbling. Sirens wailed. Flashlights cut through the dark. Cuffs snapped onto Daniel's wrists. He screamed, blamed me. But the cameras showed it all. And in Ethan's hands, the recording sealed the truth. Allison rushed in, face drained white. She looked at me, then at Ethan. "Come here, baby." But Ethan stepped back, tightened his grip on my hand. For a moment, Allison froze. Neighbors poured out. Lights on, doors open. Old Joe at the corner, the man who once believed the rumors. He met my eyes, nodded. "I was wrong about you, Thomas." I didn't answer, just nodded back. But inside, my chest burned warm. My honor was mine again. The police car pulled away. Daniel gone. The garden lay wrecked. Mud everywhere. the smell of gasoline still thick. But beside me, Ethan never let go of my hand. "Dad," he whispered. "I'm sorry, I believed him, but I'll never let him come between us again." I held my son, tears mixing with rain, and in that moment, I knew I had won back what mattered most. Not just the garden, my son. When the police car took Daniel away, the whole street still glowed with lights. I stood there, mud all over my clothes, breath heavy. Ethan gripped my hand. Max lay at my side, panting hard. The three of us, like survivors of a storm. Neighbors gathered, their eyes no longer filled with contempt, but silence and guilt. I knew my honor had been returned, not by excuses, but by truth. The next morning, on my porch, a box of pastries, a note on top. Sorry for believing the lies. Others brought coffee. Some just nodded from a distance. I didn't blame them. When rumors are vicious enough, they feel stronger than the truth. But now, the truth had been seen. Old Joe came by, holding a basket of eggs, his voice rough, trembling. "You gave me seeds, and I doubted you. I'm ashamed. Please, take this." I shook his hand. In his eyes, respect had returned. And for me, that was enough. That evening, Allison knocked, her eyes hollow, bag clutched tight. Ethan froze at the sight of her. I opened the door and waited. "Thomas." Her voice broke. "Daniel's been arrested." I never thought it would come to this. I gave a cold smile. Didn't think it would, or didn't want to see it. She lowered her head. Tears fell. She turned to Ethan. "My son, I'm sorry. I didn't know what he would do. Please, let me make it right. Can we start over?" Ethan's eyes were red, but his voice was steady. "You let him into our home. You let me believe his lies. I don't know when, or if. I can forgive you." Allison broke down. I looked at her, sighed. "Allison, I hold no grudge, but you gave our son a scar he never should have carried, and that is yours to bear." She trembled, tried to step inside. I closed the door, not in anger, but in distance, a distance that could never be crossed again. Ethan and I turned back to the garden. The soil still reeked of gas, the rows ruined. But we dug anyway, patient. Together, Max ran circles around us, barking as if cheering us on. One morning, Ethan handed me a packet of tomato seeds. His smile small, uncertain. "Dad, let's plant again. Like we used to." My throat tightened. I nodded. "Yeah, we'll plant again. And this time, it'll grow stronger." Soon, green shoots pushed through the soil, each one proof that some things can be destroyed, but not defeated. Weeks later, the summons came. In court, Daniel looked nothing like before. Thin, eyes sunken. When I walked past, he stared. At recess, he slipped close, voice cracked. "Thomas, I lost everything. Allison left me. Ethan hates me. The whole town despises me. Are you happy now?" I said calmly. "I'm not happy. I just mourn for a friend who had everything and chose to destroy it." He laughed, dry, bitter. "You won today, but you'll live with scars, and every time you see them, you'll remember me." He walked away, smaller, empty, but his words, like a blade. Some wounds never vanish. When the trial ended, neighbors gathered. One woman whispered, "Thomas, because of you, we see now how easily we were manipulated." I stayed silent, but Ethan stepped forward, his voice clear. "My father is no troublemaker. Daniel was the liar. And if you ever trusted him, remember this." Silence fell. I looked at my son. In his eyes, a strength far beyond his years. And in my chest, pride bloomed warm. That night, Ethan and I sat on the porch. The garden green again, light soft. Max asleep at our feet. Ethan leaned his head on my shoulder. "Dad, I wish none of this happened. But maybe, if it hadn't, I'd never understand you like I do now." I smiled, eyes wet. "We don't choose the storms, son, but we choose how we walk through them." Later, as he slept, I looked out at the garden. Under the moonlight, small green shoots reached upward, fragile, but unyielding, I whispered, to myself, and maybe to any man out there still lost. They can tear it down again and again, but as long as I have these hands, and my son beside me, there will always be a garden, rising from the ashes. And in that moment, I felt peace. Not because an enemy had fallen, but because I still had something to live for, to protect, to love. My garden grew green again, but if you looked closely, The scars were still there. Burnt patches. Scorched soil. I couldn't erase them. Just like I couldn't erase what happened. And I accepted that. Because sometimes, the scars remind us we survived. Every morning, I make coffee. Sit on the porch. Ethan's still asleep. Max running circles. In front of me, new sprouts push through. Small, but stubborn. And I understood. People are the same. We think we've fallen. But as long as we have a reason to rise, we grow back from ashes. At night, I still wake in a jolt. In the dark, I hear it again. Daniel's lighter. Shattering glass. Ethan screaming, "Dad!" Those sounds don't vanish. I lie still. Breathe deep. My hand pressed to my chest. The hate is gone. But the scar remains. It will stay with me. Maybe that's the price. Not to forgive the betrayer, but to forgive myself. For trusting too much. One day, Allison came again. She stood on the porch. Asked to see Ethan. He let her hug him. Brief. But his eyes no longer believed. When she left, I said nothing. Later, Ethan turned to me. "Dad, will she ever come back?" I froze. The answer caught in my throat. Finally, I just put my hand on his head. "Some questions, son, don't need answers right away." He nodded. But I saw the sadness stay in his eyes. And I knew some losses will always leave a space that nothing can fill. One afternoon, Joe came by, sat down, sighed heavy. "Thomas, I turned my back on you. Believed the rumors. That night, I realized what it feels like to have a whole town against you. I'm sorry." I nodded. "It's all right, Joe, I get it. Noise is easier to believe than silence." He gave a tired smile, poured coffee into my cup. "But silence can be a way of standing by. From now on, I won't stay silent." His words eased me. I wasn't alone anymore. The garden became our bond. One morning, Ethan brought out a packet of tomato seeds. His smile shy. "Dad, let's plant." From the start. Like before, we dug the soil, scattered the seeds, covered them with mulch. I watched his small hands, dirty with earth, and felt faith return. Maybe the strongest thing a man can do isn't just to rise again, but to show his son how. That night, I went to the garden alone. Moonlight on the soil. In the charred spot where the fire once burned, I knelt, placed a single seed, covered it with dirt. My hands trembled, but my heart was calm. I whispered, "Grow here, from where the fire tried to end you, like me, like my son." I stayed long, watching the quiet ground. Images flickered. Allison crying, Daniel screaming, neighbors silent, Ethan shouting, "Dad!" They all merged into one picture. A man, hands stained with dirt, still planting. I lost a wife. I lost a friend. I lost faith in a whole neighborhood. But I found my son again. And I found myself. I learned betrayal can steal the past, but not the future. Loneliness can kill a night, but not the hope of a lifetime. And as long as a man has one reason to rise, he will always find a garden, even if it grows from ashes. The night is quiet. I sit on the porch, sip my coffee. Max asleep at my feet. Ethan safe inside. Out there, the world is still loud. But here, in this scarred garden full of green, peace has returned. Not perfect, not whole, but enough to keep me alive.